Aigai, located near the Greek town of Vergina, is the site of both King Philip II's assassination in 336 BC and the location of his burial tomb. His death was hugely consequential as it suddenly elevated his son Alexander III, otherwise known as Alexander the Great, to the Macedonian throne at the age of 20. We can only speculate how history would have been altered if Alexander the Great had been elevated to the throne at a later age. Would his youthful ambition and idealism, which led him to conquer lands as far east as India and as south as Egypt, given way to a more cautious and pragmatic worldview often found in middle age? Perhaps no line better illustrates the image we have of the young, brash, and glory-hounding Alexander than what was written by Plutarch. Whenever he heard Philip had taken any town of importance or won any signal victory, instead of rejoicing at it altogether, he would tell his companions that his father would anticipate everything and leave him and them no opportunities of performing great and illustrious actions. It would be erroneous to believe that Alexander's achievements were his alone, as the evidence overwhelmingly points to his father Philip being the foundation stone upon which it was built. Militarily, his father greatly expanded the size of the Macedonian army, adopting the famed Macedonian phalanx armed with the sarissa, a pike measuring between 16 to 23 feet in length. With this new Macedonian army, Philip was able to consolidate regional power with victories over the Illyrians, Thracians, and capturing the city of Amphipolis and its lucrative gold mines. He was later elected leader of the Thessalian League after leading them to victory in the Third Sacred War. Later, southern Greece, dominated by the powerful city-states of Thebes and Athens, were diplomatically adjoined to the Macedonian kingdom by joining the League of Corinth, often referred to as the Hellenic League, with Philip at its head. Interestingly, the Battle of Chaeronea, which paved the way for the establishment of the League of Corinth, featured Alexander leading the left wing of Philip's army versus the Athenians and Thebans. Such experience in generalship under Philip was undoubtedly critical to Alexander's development. Although Alexander was at his father's side at the Battle of Chaeronea, things quickly soured. Philip was famous not only for his generalship, but his political acumen, notably having 7 wives to solidify his rule. The marriage of Olympias, mother of Alexander, to Philip was an example of this. A princess of neighboring Molosia, the marriage helped to secure Philip's kingdom to the east. At the time of the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC, Alexander was the only reasonable successor to Philip based upon age and experience. However, in 337 BC, just a year later, things changed for the worse when Philip married his final wife Cleopatra, who was Macedonian as opposed to Olympias, who was not. The prospect that Philip's marriage to Cleopatra might give rise to a full-blooded male Macedonian heir could not have gone unnoticed by Alexander and his mother Olympias. Could Alexander, who was only half Macedonian, be a legitimate successor to the kingdom if an alternative full-blooded Macedonian heir was present? Further complicating the situation was that the uncle to Philip's new wife, Cleopatra, was the general Attalus, a highly influential confidant of Philip. The most open quarrel was brought on by Attalus at the marriage of Cleopatra, a maiden whom Philip was taking to wife, having fallen in love with the girl when he was past the age for it. Attalus now was the girl's uncle, and being in his cups, he called upon the Macedonians to ask of the gods that from Philip and Cleopatra there might be born a legitimate successor to the kingdom. At this, Alexander was exasperated, and with the words, "But what of me, base wretch? Dost thou take me for a bastard?" threw a cup at him. King Philip was assassinated in 336 BC, just a year following his marriage to his new Macedonian wife Cleopatra. There is quite a sense of awe to be able to stand in the same theater where one of the most famous assassinations of history took place. It was here, while attending a wedding, that Philip was assassinated by his bodyguard Pausanias. It's unlikely we will ever really know the true motivation for this assassination. The idea of a larger conspiracy involving Alexander and his mother Olympias cannot be fully dismissed given Alexander's now tenuous succession to the Macedonian throne. The fact that the assassin Pausanias was promptly killed by some of Alexander's bodyguards, and Alexander, present at the wedding, was immediately proclaimed king seems fortuitous to say the least. Diodorus of Sicily, writing in the 1st century AD, suggested a more sordid sexual reason for the assassination. In his book Bibliotheca Historica, Diodorus suggests that the bodyguard Pausanias and King Philip were lovers. There was a Macedonian, Pausanias, who came of a family from the district of Orestis. He was a bodyguard of the king and was beloved of him because of his beauty. Later, Attalus, the uncle of Philip's new wife Cleopatra, apparently facilitated a rape of Pausanias. When told about this, Philip declined to punish the important political ally. Philip's refusal to stand up for his lover Pausanias was the motivation for the assassination, according to Diodorus. Attalus, who was a member of the court circle and influential with the king, invited the first Pausanias to dinner, and when he had plied him till drunk with unmixed wine, handed his unconscious body over to the muleteers to abuse in drunken licentiousness. So he presently recovered from his drunken stupor, and deeply resenting the outrage to his person, charged Attalus before the king with the outrage. Philip shared his anger at the barbarity of the act, but did not wish to punish Attalus at that time because of their relationship, and because Attalus' services were needed urgently. Although the capital Macedonia had already moved to the city of Pella before Philip's reign, Aigai was still the cultural heart of the kingdom. It was here where major religious celebrations still took place, and where Macedonian royalty were buried. For the tourist, it's particularly interesting that you can visit the site of Philip's assassination and, in probably one of the greatest archaeological discoveries ever, his intact burial site. A tumulus tomb, sometimes referred to as a burial mound, is an artificial mound of earth and stones built over one or more graves. In 1977, excavation of the tumulus located at Aigai revealed Philip II's tomb with all of the burial items still present, untouched by grave robbers. The visitor is immediately struck by the facade of this tomb, which resembles a temple entrance. The frieze or decorative band on the facade of this tomb depicts a royal hunt. Although faded, two figures are prominently displayed in the center. On the left is Philip II, thrusting his spear into the beast. The purple-clothed figure on the right is Alexander himself. Besides being decorative and religious, it also serves as a political statement regarding the transfer of power from Philip to Alexander. It is worth noting that this depiction of Alexander is amongst the earliest depictions of him to have survived. Within this tomb, the actual bones of Philip were discovered in a gold larnax emblazoned with the royal star of Macedonian royalty. The funeral pyre that Philip was cremated in likely took place on the vault of the burial tomb, with his bones subsequently placed in a larnax. Found in the coffin, along with Philip's remains, was a gold oak wreath that presumably rested on his head during the cremation. Close inspection of this wreath reveals a number of burnt and distorted leaves from the flames. Probably the most convincing argument in favor of this tomb being that of Philip's rests on historical accounts of wounds he sustained in battle. When I saw that Philip himself, with whom our conflict lay, for the sake of empire and absolute power, had his eye knocked out, his collarbone broken, his hand and his leg maimed. The skeletal remains from this tomb include a fused tibia and trauma to the right eye socket, consistent with wounds he suffered during his life. Here we have the greaves taken from this tomb. It is immediately noticeable that it is asymmetrical in nature, consistent with the leg wound noted in ancient sources. Although there are people that argue otherwise, the general consensus is that this tomb and its contents are that of King Philip II. Accompanying Philip in the tomb are weapons and armor clearly befitting of a king of his stature. The detailing is amongst the best preserved from Greek antiquity. Perhaps most impressive is the magnificent chryselephantine shield with an ivory inlay depicting a warrior striking a mortal blow to an Amazon, the Amazons being the mythical female warriors that Herodotus described as the killers and slayers of men. In addition to the weapons and armor, is a beautiful silver banquet set. For someone that enjoyed his wine, bringing these drinking vessels seems only natural. It is worth noting that these fortified wines back then would have required decanting, dilution with water, and oftentimes adding of various items such as honey, spices, and aromatics. One of the reasons that Aigai is such a captivating archaeological site is how closely a major historical figure is interwoven into it. The visitor is able to walk among the ruins of Philip's palace here, visit the site of his assassination, and his burial site. A burial site undisturbed and not looted, a rarity for an event that took place over 2,300 years ago. One could make an argument that if Philip had died earlier or later than 336 BC, history may have been radically altered. Alexander may never have gone on to conquer the East, ushering in the significant cultural and political changes that define the Hellenistic period. If you enjoyed this talk, please like, comment, subscribe, and check out my other videos on antiquity.